Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Emma Gillespie.
I'm Emily Donohoe.
The new year is often a time for reflections, goal setting and resolutions, but January can also follow, for some of us, a period of heavy or frequent drinking as part of the festive season. But the hangover from that festive season is actually seeing an increasing number of young people reducing or reevaluating their relationship with alcohol. This is what's known as the sober-curiousity movement. I'm sure you've heard all about it, and it is a booming industry. So today we're exploring this movement with TDA journalist Emily. Em, welcome to the pod debut.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. You've been going deep on sober curiosity, and I feel like it is a movement that we're hearing a lot more about, but still a relatively new one. So I guess, what is it? Where do we start? How do I become someone who is sober curious?
So the term came from a 2018 book by an author called Ruby Warrington, and that book is called Sober Curious.
Okay.
And someone who is sober curious is not fully sober, but they're making more conscious decisions around their alcohol consumption.
Right.
So this could look like joining in Dry January, which is a relevant one right now for us, or doing Feb Fast, or maybe opting for the non-alcoholic option at an event where we would typically drink. So say a wedding, a party, a festive function, that kind of thing.
So sober curious doesn't necessarily mean someone is ditching alcohol altogether. They're just, I guess, becoming more mindful about when they consume it. Is that right?
Yes, 100%. And some sober curious people like Dom, who I'll tell you a little bit about later, start off sober curious and then they dive right in after feeling better when they're alcohol free. And it's certainly an effective way to reduce the beloved hangxiety.
Yeah, anxiety in January is a special kind of anxiety. Okay, so sober curiosity can look like just changing a few of your habits, reducing how much you drink, but it can act as this kind of gateway, I suppose, to cutting out alcohol altogether. How common is sober curiosity here in Australia?
So a 2025 study by the Foundation for Alcohol Research and Education found that 44% of Australians who do drink want to consume less or stop drinking altogether, which is more than the 2020 study, which was 29% of respondents.
Wow. Okay. So around 1 in 3 Aussies were sober curious in 2020. 5 years later, that increased to nearly half. What about young people specifically?
So according to the latest National Drug and Alcohol Survey data, the number of 18 to 24-year-olds who are abstaining from alcohol increased from 13% in 2007 to 23%, so almost a quarter, in 2022-2023.
Okay, and that's the latest available data we have from that survey. So I guess we can assume that that number has increased even further in the last couple of years.
Yes.
I'm interested to understand sober curiosity on a global scale, I guess, and because we've got that data from Australia. We know Australians are thinking at least about drinking less, but what about elsewhere in the world?
Yes, so we are in a social media world where trends can transcend countries and nations, and the trend is definitely not limited to Australia. A US-based survey from December 2024 found that 65% of Gen Z and 57% of millennials are trying to drink less.
Wow, that's a lot of young people, both generations, straddled by that data there. I guess the big question, Em, is why? What is the reason that people take an interest in sober curiosity?
Sure. So if we look at those surveys and that poll, it found in the US that around 40% of the Gen Z respondents said that they are drinking less to improve their mental health. And half of sober Gen Z participants said they simply just don't want to drink alcohol. And back home, the FAIR study, which wasn't age specific, found that people didn't want to drink for a variety of reasons, mostly for their physical health, but also for their mental health and to improve their sleep.
Okay, that's so interesting that the divide is almost even amongst young people, according to that US survey. We've got nearly half saying they want to drink less for mental health benefits, nearly half saying that they just don't want to drink alcohol. Fascinating kind of generational comparison there. I'm also interested in the kind of marketing side of sober curiosity. I guess we've seen a real shift in the last few years in how beverage companies have approached their marketing. How has this all manifested in the alcohol-free drinks market?
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen more alcohol-free options at a bottle shop or at a bar, at a restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely.
I spoke with the Alcohol Beverages Australia Executive Director, Alistair Coe, and he said that alcoholic drink producers are changing and innovating in response to more consumers being, quote, deliberate about what they drink.
Yeah, I've certainly noticed more options. Cocktail menus will often have a corresponding mocktail menu or entire, pages and pages of alcohol-free options now. One market that seems to have grown a lot is the alcohol-free beer market, especially, right?
Hello, Billy here from TDA. We have just looked at our YouTube analytics and 95% of you who are watching our videos aren't subscribing. If you want to help independent media like us grow, the best way you can do that is by pressing subscribe. Thank you so much, and back to the video.
Yes, for sure. So ANZ estimated that the alcoholic beer market is going to grow from 150 million litres produced in 2024 to 300 million litres produced in 2028. So that's double in 4 years.
Wow, a lot of people drinking a lot of alcohol-free beer.
Definitely, and one of those brands is Heaps Normal, which was launched in 2020 by Andy Miller, Ben Holdstock and Geordie Smith. Andy told me that since founding Heaps Normal, he noticed that the drinking culture has, and I quote, shifted from it being weird not to drink to it being weird to ask somebody why they're not drinking.
Yeah, that social conversation has been a really interesting shift for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And rather than opting for soft drinks, water or coffee, sober-curious people are sometimes drawn to more sophisticated beverages, maybe those that replicate what they had when they were drinking. And the market shows that.
Absolutely.
On the other hand, though, alcohol-free products that taste like their alcoholic counterparts can sometimes be the wrong drink for those on their sober journey. And Sober in the Country founder Shanna One has urged those who are in a fragile recovery period from alcohol to please be really cautious around drinks that imitate alcohol. She said, for some they're safe, but for others they're linked to relapse.
Wow, that is really interesting because I suppose this market boom has seen a lot of alcohol-free or low alcohol products emerge that taste just like the quote-unquote real thing. So fascinating perspective there. Emily, you actually spoke to someone who has lived this journey and gone through many evolutions. What did you learn about sober curiosity from that person?
Yeah, that's right. I spoke to podcaster and wellness advocate Dominique Alyssa, who quit drinking in October 2024 after she had 1 year of a sober curious period.
Right. So she was sober curious, then completely quit.
Yes, yeah. And she marked 1 year of sobriety in October last year. So here's some of what she had to say about her journey with sobriety.
It started off as a healthy relationship with alcohol where it was fun and going out, to then every weekend having to drink and then relying on it to fall asleep at night because I couldn't shut down my thoughts.
Dom said the beginning of her sober journey was difficult, but now she's really driven by the message of choice.
It's just a way of life, and I feel so fulfilled and I feel so passionate about sharing this message to young people that if you feel that you drink just because you have to, maybe consider going sober.
I know one of the things that can make it hard for people who are sober curious, and we've touched on this a little bit, is the social aspect of drinking. You hear people say, I'm worried that if I quit alcohol or I drink less, my friends will grill me or ask questions that I don't want to talk about, or they won't include me in activities, that sort of FOMO that comes with anything associated with socialization. Does Dom have any advice specifically linked to that kind of concern?
Yes, and a super interesting story to go with it, actually. So she got married last year in Italy, and instead of having champagne to greet her guests at the cocktail hour, she actually had matcha, which is her favorite alcohol-free alternative.
There you go.
Yeah, so rather than toasting with champagne with her loved ones, they brought out the matcha and they were able to have an alcohol-free moment together.
What I realized in my sobriety is that I love the motion of having a drink and cheersing it. But it doesn't need to be alcohol. If you have a glass that looks like an alcoholic drink, no one will even question you. So if you don't want to even talk about it, don't worry.
So if someone around you is trying to drink less this year, advocates say you should really cheer them on for it. If they're having a drink with you, make it a non-alcoholic one or pack something alcohol-free for them so you can still have that moment together. You can still spend time in the summer months, in the sunshine, but not around alcohol.
Amazing. I think a big one here too is we often take other people's actions really personally. I don't know why in the Australian drinking culture, if someone's drinking less or not drinking, sometimes we feel like maybe that's an attack or a comment on our own consumption
100%.
habits. And I think the learning here from all the experts you've spoken to is this is a really personal decision that some people make. It may not be for everyone, but, you know, choice can't be a bad thing.
Of course.
So interesting. Some great advice there and a lot to think about this new year. Emily, thank you for joining us to unpack sober curiosity. And what an amazing pod debut. Thank you.
Thank you.
And if today's episode has raised any issues for you, support is available via the National Alcohol and Other Drug Hotline on 1-800-250-015, or you can call Lifeline anytime on 13 11 14. We will be back later today with the evening news headlines, but until then, have a great day.